Okay, so this video is designed to help guide you through the first 10 amendments. We've already gone over the amendment process, okay, which you can find in Article 5, explains to you how amendments are made. Okay, so if you ever need to review that, here's the process of how amendments are made. But I want to look at the first 10 in particular because the first 10 are special. And it actually all has to do with ratification and how they needed 9 out of the 13 states to agree to ratify the Constitution. Okay, so in class, I handed out this sheet right here, which has the original 13 states and when they ratified the Constitution. And if you weren't in class, this document is scanned and is up on Schoology for you to check out and download it to Notability. Okay? But as you can see, here are the 13 states. And as we know, the Constitution was written September 17th, 1787 and sent out to all the 13 states for ratification. And they needed 9 out of 13 to ratify. So the obvious states you would want to know that I may ask you about is the very first state to ratify the Constitution was Delaware. Now, we know that Delaware was not the first colony, right? Virginia was the first colony in 1607. But Delaware becomes the first state in the United States because we didn't have a United States until we had a Constitution. So Delaware becomes the first state because they're the first team to do their remote learning. Once they got their homework, which is to review the Constitution and decide whether or not to ratify it, they're the first ones to get it done, and it is unanimous, 30-0 in their convention. So Delaware becomes the first state. So when does the Constitution actually go into power? Well, as you know, you need 9 out of the 13. So let's check it out. Delaware 1, Pennsylvania 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, so when New Hampshire becomes the ninth state to ratify, now we have a supreme law of the land. So this is when the Constitution officially goes into effect. Okay? June 21st, 1788. Now, we have the Constitution now. It's active now after New Hampshire becomes the 9th state to ratify. Okay? But then you start to see these states down here that haven't ratified yet. Let's take a look at what types of states they are. Okay? Virginia, super important state, super populated. It was our first colony, right? We can't have a country without Virginia. New York, super populated as well. The problem is that these states that were slower to ratify, they had some concerns, okay? These guys down here wanted a Bill of Rights, meaning they were concerned. They were concerned that the government that they were about to join had too much power and that the people had very little power. These states were called anti-federalist states, meaning they wanted states to have more power, people to have more power, and not a big-time central government. Okay? So they really said, we will ratify if you guys start working on a Bill of Rights. All right? Which are amendments that will protect the rights of the individual people. So that is what's going to happen. And the first 10 amendments are going to be called, so 1 through 10 are called the Bill of Rights. Okay, and they're all going to be written in and published in the year 1791. All right, first 10 amendments are called the Bill of Rights. And so we're going to look at the Bill of Rights right now and how why states wanted them to be amended and added into this Constitution before they officially signed off and ratified. So, the very First Amendment, okay, covers a bunch of different freedoms. Freedom of religion, press, and expression. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people to peacefully assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. All right, this First Amendment, the most important amendment, right? And we know that amendments are additions or changes, right? So these are additions or changes to the Constitution. This covers a bunch of basic freedoms of United States citizens. Freedoms of religion. We have a freedom of religion in this country. Freedom of speech. There are limits on all of our freedoms, like religion and speech, but we do have a freedom of speech. Freedom of the press, meaning the newspaper and the media to publish stories. Peacefully assemble or protest. You got to do it in a peaceful way, not a violent way. And then petition for grievances. Meaning, if you don't like what's going on with your government, you have a chance to petition to get it changed. Okay? So, that's the very First Amendment. It's the most important one. It covers 5 different freedoms. We have a freedom of religion, speech, freedom of the press, freedom to peacefully assemble, and freedom to petition our grievances to the government. That is Amendment 1. Amendment 2, the right to bear arms. A well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state. All right? The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Meaning, to protect ourselves and our state and our country, we have the right to bear arms in order to maintain a well-regulated militia. Okay? Now, there's a lot of people who have weapons that are not in a well-regulated militia, so that is the debate about how much power this amendment has. Now, the government can make regulations and rules about the types of weapons you can own or possess and what type of security background checks and waiting periods and what types of arms are legal and which ones are not. But generally, we have a right to bear arms, and the government determines what type of arms we should bear and what are the rules around that. Okay? Now, quartering of soldiers. This one's easy. Amendment 3. Okay? So, you remember the old Quartering Act from the King's Acts. This is just doesn't come up too much anymore, but this is just making sure that no sort of quartering act can ever happen. Meaning, all right, you are not forced to house troops. If they come knocking on your door and say, hey, I'm a service person, you need to allow me to stay here, like the British soldiers were doing in 1765. This is making sure that you never have to do that if you don't want to. So no soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner. So you don't need to let them in. And 4, my favorite one, is against illegal searches and seizures. The right of people to be secure in their persons, meaning not to be searched, or their houses to be searched, or their papers and effects to be searched against unreasonable searches and seizures, shall not be violated. All right, so some searches are reasonable. All right, in order for your house to be searched, most times you need something called a warrant. We're going to go over all these rules when we study the Bill of Rights in our next unit after vacation. Okay, but police cannot just break down your door and search your house. All right, if it's unreasonable or without probable cause. We will discuss all of this later, but you need probable cause, or you agree to let them in, or they have a warrant that particularly describes the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. It cannot be random. So these are your rights against illegal searches. And when we say seizures, we're not talking about a medical episode, but confiscating of your property, a seizure of your property, meaning your papers or anything in your car, anything that you own or have in your possession. Amendment 5, if you plead the Fifth Amendment, all right, this means that you are entitled to having a jury, okay? No person shall be held to answer, okay, for anything unless, you flip the page, orange kind of bleeding through, but that's okay. And you cannot be twice put in jeopardy, meaning you can't be tried twice for the same crime. And you cannot be forced to be, nor be compelled or forced to be a witness against yourself, nor be deprived life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Okay, so this is what this means. All right, the Fifth Amendment covers a lot of our rights when it comes to crimes and juries. So you have the right to a jury, but you have the right to be silent. The right to remain silent. When you hear that, which is called a Miranda warning or Miranda rights from a police officer, they're reminding you, you don't have to answer anything. You can just be quiet. If what you're about to say can be used against you to make you look guilty. Also, no double jeopardy, which is not just a game show, but you cannot be charged twice for the exact same crime. All right. So, if you're found innocent in a trial by jury of a crime, they cannot say, "Oh, well, redo." All right, we want to have that trial again. Okay? Now, if you commit the same crime twice on two separate occasions in two separate circumstances, that's one thing. But if I get charged and brought to court for I don't know what it might be, for burning my own house down, okay, I can't be brought back a second time for burning my own house down if it's the same house. Okay, now if I burn another house down, if I burn my second house down, that's a separate crime. So you cannot be tried for the same crime, the same specific crime twice. That's what that's saying. Then, this is also part of your Miranda rights. You have the right to a speedy trial, and you have a right to question witnesses. Meaning, you have the right to an impartial jury, meaning your jury should be people that don't know you and don't know the circumstances. And you get the assistance of counsel, meaning you have the right to a lawyer. You have the right to counsel, which is a lawyer. And if you cannot afford one, they will appoint one for you, which is called a public defender. Now, you can waive that right and be your own lawyer and defend yourself in a trial, but it's recommended against. But even if you can't afford a lawyer, one will be appointed to you. Okay, you have the right to counsel. Amendment 7, trial by jury in civil cases. Meaning, you have the right to a jury, and you have the right to a jury in big cases. Now, some small cases or civil court, you don't need a jury. Those are like, if you ever watch court shows on TV, like Judge Judy or the People's Court or Judge Joe Brown or whatever court shows may be on, there's no jury there. Okay, those are small claims courts that usually have to do with who owes who money. But big time felonies, okay, all right, you would be able to have a trial by jury. And it also says that courts cannot overturn the jury's decision. If a jury says you're innocent, the judge can't say, nope, disagree, try it again. Okay? The jury's decision in a case is final. All right, Amendment 8, cruel and unusual punishment. We have the right against cruel and unusual punishment, meaning the punishment that you get needs to fit the crime. Now, if I stole a library book, I should not get the death penalty. That seems a little extreme, all right, for that type of punishment. Okay, so the punishment that is selected for you should be equivalent to the crime. There are tiers of crimes, all right, layers of crimes and layers of punishments, and they should fit each other, okay? Just like the punishment for murder should not be 24 hours in jail, okay? So the punishment needs to fit the crime. Now, Amendment 9 and 10, last two, the construction of the Constitution. What this says is that you have certain rights that may not be in the Constitution. Okay? This is just telling us, the people, you know what? You have more rights than what's listed here. Because we could go on and on and on and list all of your rights, but there are more. And this is an understanding that we have more rights than what is found inside the Constitution. We're not limited to just the rights that are listed here. We have many more rights than that. And then finally, the powers of the states and the people, Amendment 10. Meaning, the powers that are not defined or delegated to the United States by the Constitution, all right, are reserved to the states. Meaning, any laws that are not federal, meaning federal laws, those laws can be made by states. So let's go back to an example I've used before. Motorcycle helmet law. There's no federal United States helmet law for motorcycles. Therefore, on a state-by-state basis, states can decide whether or not they want to make laws about motorcycle helmets. In Vermont, there is a law. You got to wear a helmet on a motorcycle. In New Hampshire, there is not. So, any big-time federal laws that aren't created by our federal government, it is up to states to make those laws. So our state governments in Montpelier or the capital of any other state, they get to make any laws for their state that's not already a federal law. All right, so what we discussed in this video is the Bill of Rights, meaning in order to ratify the Constitution, you need 9 out of 13 states. You learned that during that ratification, Delaware becomes the first state to ratify the Constitution. New Hampshire becomes the 9th one, making the Constitution officially going into effect. And these other states, we didn't want to just leave them hanging. We couldn't have a country without them. They were important. They really wanted to draft the Bill of Rights. And so that's what we did. And in the year 1791, we passed a package of 10 amendments, which are now known as the Bill of Rights. And it covers all of our basic freedoms as citizens. Freedom of religion, speech, press, peacefully assemble, petition for grievances, the right to bear arms, the right to not have to quarter troops, the right against illegal searches and seizures of your property, your right to remain silent and not incriminate yourself, the right against double jeopardy, to not be charged twice for the same crime. You have the right to a lawyer. If you can't afford one, you get a public defender. You have the right to a trial by jury, and courts cannot overturn their decision. You have the right against cruel and unusual punishment. Your punishment should fit the crime. You also have more rights than what's listed in the Constitution, and any laws that aren't made by the federal government are up to the states to make. Okay, the next amendments, Amendment 11 through 27, will be a different video.